Hello friend and welcome. Today's kitchen location is Aalborg, Denmark. This kitchen is really wonderful. It has so many nice features. I'm really happy to be cooking in here. It's small but certainly workable. As we travel around the world, one thing I can tell you for sure is that every kitchen is sort of a grab bag. You're never sure what you're going to get or what it's going to be like. I guess because I'm curious, I like to see what other kitchens are like around the world. Before we get into the recipe, let's take a little spin and see what the kitchen has and see what it might be missing. First of all, we have a nice 4-burner stove top. That's always nice. Comes with a hood and lights that work. Not a whole lot of counter space, but certainly in a good position between the stovetop and the sink. Cutting boards, knives, utensils, coffee pot, tea kettle, plenty of dishes, large, small, and some shallow bowls. In this side we have nice glassware, some more bowls, and I thought these were super cute. Here, look at this. Look at these little fish plates. I'm not sure, but I think these are when you make fish, you put your fish bones here. But I could be wrong, but I think so. And let's not drop this out of the cupboard. But here are bowls and baking dishes. Next up is a super duper luxury item that I'm very grateful for. We have a great big dishwasher. Utensil drawer with some miscellaneous utensils. Little tin foil. Alright, let's look in this drawer. Here we have some nice storage containers. Looks to be a 9x13 pan and a cookie sheet. Lots of times there are no cookie sheets, so maybe that means I need to make cookies. And the bottom drawer we have big pot, little pot, colander, big bowls, few frying pans, and then we have this item. Obviously this is something to do with slicing and grating. I don't know how to use it. I might have to look this up and see what you do with this. Nice big fridge with freezer. Next door looks like a cupboard, but it's actually a pull-out pantry. Here there are some supplies that were left previously and some of my own. Dishwashing detergent, coffee pot, grater. Up top we have a blender, a toaster, and here we have a microwave with more pans that can go in the oven. This pulls down and looks like the rest of the cupboards. Very nice look. A nice oven. And the washing machine. There you have it. Today we'll be making wacky cake. Actually, this is wacky cake with apple and cinnamon. You can substitute other fruit, or you can completely leave the fruit and cinnamon out. That's one of the best parts about this recipe. It is very adaptable and very forgiving. I have made this cake everywhere from Malaysia to Mexico to Albania and now in Denmark. It's kind of my go-to because it's so forgiving. You really don't need proper measuring cups and spoons because it always seems to turn out. Dean and I don't mind not having icing or frosting on our cakes, but if I had some powdered sugar and a little milk, I'd probably make a cinnamon powdered sugar glaze for this. I'll leave the recipe with the cake at the end. Sometimes when you're traveling, it just doesn't seem worth it to buy a whole box or bag of powdered sugar and only use a few spoonfuls out of it. So we're gonna forego that, and I'm just as happy without the icing. It's basically kind of like a quick bread. I guess here in Denmark, as well as Minnesota, one could put butter on it. That might be a really Scandinavian thing to do. Okay, and right off the bat, I'm going to detour from the recipe, but I'm going to follow it halfway. The recipe calls for a cup of room temperature water, and we do need some acid, and I don't have any vinegar, so I'm going to put in yogurt. And I'm doing this very first thing because the yogurt and the milk are cold, and I want to bring those to room temperature as per the recipe. So what I'm going to do is pour in some yogurt. This happens to be strawberry. Well, yeah, it happens to be strawberry, and it's not going to make a big flavor change in the recipe. And instead of water, I'm going to use milk because I think it's going to make it taste a lot richer. And this was a depression recipe, so they were trying to save on things like milk and dairy, and I have this available, so I'm going to go ahead and use milk, and we're going to let that come up to room temperature. I don't have any measuring cups, and I don't think it's really going to make a big difference. This is a pretty forgiving cake, so I'm going to call this a cup. I'm going to be putting apples in my wacky cake, Apple Cinnamon Wacky Cake, and so let's wash these, peel them, chop them up, and get them sauteing so that they can be cooked and cool when we get to the cake part. Okay, now we'll chop our apple into little pieces to make the cake. Unfortunately, I can't give you a different angle because the kitchen is not set up for that. So, like this stuff, of course, we'll make sure we cut that all out. Oh, this piece has a little one too. And then I suppose this will be maybe a fat 1/4 of an inch. We'll cut them into these little dice. So about that big. Not as big as my fingernail. We'll cut both apples up and put them in a fry pan to saute. Alright, here are my chopped up apples already in the fry pan, and the recipe calls for 2 tablespoons of either butter or oil. So let's go crazy. Let's do a tablespoon of butter and a tablespoon of oil. See my funky Danish spoons? Alright, let's do that. Next, it calls for 2 or 3 tablespoons of brown or white sugar. I try to keep my kitchen pretty simple, so I have white sugar. And I'm only going to go with 2 because the cake calls for a cup of sugar, which I think sounds like a lot. I'm going to go for 2. And a teaspoon of cinnamon. And I'm just getting this ready on the side while my apples soften up. There we go. Okay, we're going to saute the apples for probably 5 to 7 minutes. I like to give them a little head start in getting soft before I put the sugar in, so they start to soften so I don't burn the sugar. These have been in a couple minutes. Now I'll add my cinnamon and sugar, and we'll get going with that. So altogether this should take 5 to 7 minutes, and I'm doing this first so that it can cool because we don't want to add hot mixture to our cake because we don't want to cook the cake before we actually bake it in the oven. This might be a little high. I'm going to turn it down when I figure it out here. Smells delicious. Smells nice and cinnamony. Okay, probably another 3-4 minutes for that. So, can I let you in on a little secret? A lot of times when I'm baking, I invite my boyfriends over and they give me lots of encouragement. You know, like Jason Mraz, he always sings to me that I'm yours, that he's mine, and I think, well, yeah, because I'm making you apple cake. And then Cab Mo, he comes over and he's a little more diplomatic and he's a little more romantic. He sings the song to me, "You don't have to shave your legs for me." And I think, okay, now you're going to be getting some apple cake with that attitude. This is looking good. I'm going to take it off the heat so it can cool. Oh, and by the way, I can't have them singing in the background because, you know, copyright, and they don't really want me to tell you that they're here, so you'll just have to trust me. Okay, we'll start off with 1.5 cups of flour. We will use our trusty coffee cup for the measure. All right, here's 1. Here's the half. Next, 1 cup of sugar. Seems like a lot. Maybe I'll go a little, that's about a cup. Maybe a little shy. Next, a teaspoon of baking soda. And what I like to do is kind of tap my hand so that it doesn't all go in one spot. This might help distribute it. We'll whisk it, of course, but I like to do that. And in most of Europe, they don't have, or it seems like they don't use vanilla extract. They use vanilla sugar. So I'll be putting in a teaspoon of vanilla sugar. Smells wonderful. I don't know, maybe I'll do the same with this. Sprinkle a little more. Half a teaspoon of salt, and remember your 7th grade home ec teacher that said never pour it over your batter in case the salt comes pouring out. I'd say that looks like a half. Next, I'm going to whisk this together. I'm not sure if this is how this is supposed to be. Anyway, I'm going to whisk this together so that I can distribute the baking soda and the salt. We don't want that to be all in one spot, so this way when the acid from the yogurt milk hits this, it'll activate it all and it won't have, you know, like a rupture in one spot. So just whisk this together so it's nice and incorporated. Easy peasy. Then it calls for 1/3 cup of oil. Since this is a depression, I'm assuming it was easier to get oil than it was butter. Easier and or cheaper. I'd say that looks like 1/3 cup. Pour that in. And here's where, if you were using vinegar, you would put the vinegar in, but I subbed the yogurt for the acid and I subbed milk for water. I stirred that up. Hopefully it's room temperature, and now I'll pour this in. And the yogurt will activate the baking soda. Okay, next we're going to stir this together without overly mixing it, but getting it all incorporated and mixed together. If I had a clear bowl, I would use that, but this is going to work just fine. I think that looks great. And my oven has been preheating to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. And perhaps I should have said something at the time when we were doing the flour. If you want this extra cinnamony, you know, go for putting in an extra 1/2 teaspoon or teaspoon of cinnamon into the cake batter. Don't do it now because it'll clump. Okay, I'm going to add my apple mixture. All that sugary, appley goodness in there. Cinnamony. Now we'll give this another couple stirs. Ooh, it's already looking cinnamony and lovely. That's going to be beautiful. If you want to, you can experiment with nutmeg, just a little bit. Make it more of a spice cake. Okay, I'm not going to overmix this. Recipe calls for an ungreased 8-inch pan. I think from here to here on me is 8 inches. So this looks like it's a 9-inch pan, but it's not very deep. So I think this is going to work. And we will put our batter in our cake pan here. And fear not, I didn't bore you with all the scraping, but I have scraped this bowl till about every drop of batter is in my pan. Looks good. You can do this a little bit, I don't know. And now let's pop it in the oven. Oven was preheated to 350, 180 Fahrenheit. And let's put it in there. And that's gonna bake for 30 to 35 minutes until a toothpick comes out clean. I don't think I have a toothpick. I might wing it or try a butter knife. We'll see. Pull this here. Can you still see it? Whoa, dude. Man, that's something that can happen. Oh, goodness. As long as we're here, let's try the knife test. It's very brown on top, so I'm thinking it's done. Oh yeah, perfectly clean. Now if I can get this off of here without burning myself again. And now for the part that we're all really here for, the taste test. It smells so good in here. You can see that there are chunks of apple in there. Smells cinnamony and vanilla-y. And I have to admit, it's still warm. Oh, Don't let that golden brown crust fool you into thinking it's dry. It's not. It's super moist. The apples are tender. The cinnamon with the sweetness works perfectly. This is a wonderful recipe that goes with me around the world and is basically foolproof. You can add other ingredients to it. You can leave the apples out for a change up, but it always works and I'm always happy with it. We love traveling, don't get me wrong. It is kind of a new learning process every 30 days, and like I said, kind of a grab bag. You're never sure what you're gonna get. But when I have a recipe like this wacky apple cake, I can bring some consistency with me. I don't have to have fancy tools or equipment. It's kind of a comfort and familiarity in a location where you're not yet comfortable or familiar. It's a lot of fun and I hope you try it. Let me know in the comments if you have a favorite recipe that doesn't require precise measuring, even in baking. Cooking is pretty forgiving, but in baking you usually need to be within certain parameters. Thanks for stopping by. Please give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and share this with someone that you know that might enjoy wacky cake or a kitchen tour in a Danish kitchen.